At a family dinner, my husband publicly handed me a bill for living expenses and said, "Since you don't work, start paying your share." His mother nodded and said, "Women like you need to be kept in line." I stood, took my purse, and walked out. 2 days later, the family group chat lit up because I had. My name's Dana. I'm 39. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, for most of my adult life. I was married to Greg, who's 41. We were together for 12 years. I gave him 12 years. We didn't meet in some fairy tale way. We met at a work conference in Charlotte. I was in event planning back then, managing trade shows and conferences. He was already working in finance. He came off polished and successful. He talked a big game about goals and being disciplined. At the time, I thought that meant mature. What it really meant was control freak. But I didn't see that until it was too late. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. He told me I was the most together woman he'd ever met. Said I reminded him of the life he wanted. Said we were going to build something real together. And for a while, I believed him. When we got married, I was still working. But when I had my first miscarriage, I couldn't handle the long hours and the travel anymore. I was hurting, and honestly, I felt like a failure. Greg told me I didn't need to keep working. "I make enough for both of us," he said. "Focus on getting better. We'll try again." So I quit my job. That's where it started. I didn't go back to work after that. After the second miscarriage, I started feeling like maybe kids just weren't going to happen for us. I tried to find other ways to feel useful. I took care of everything at home. I mean everything. I cooked, cleaned, paid bills, handled insurance, scheduled appointments, made sure his family was taken care of. Greg's mom got sick a few years ago. Guess who drove her to chemo every week? Guess who cleaned her fridge when she couldn't bend down? Me. I did it all. I never complained. I thought I was being a good wife. I didn't realize I was being trained. The longer I stayed out of work, the more Greg started acting like I was part of the house, like a sofa or a microwave. Useful, but not worth real respect. He didn't ask me how my day was anymore. He stopped thanking me for dinner. He stopped hugging me when he got home. He'd just walk in, drop his keys on the counter, and ask, "Did you remember to call the plumber?" One time I asked if we could go out to dinner, just the two of us. He said, "Why? We have food here." I let it go. For years I let it go. Then came the dinner. It was his mother's birthday. I hosted at our house, like I always did. I cooked all her favorites. Greg told me she didn't want a restaurant this year. She wanted family time. So I went all out. I cleaned the house top to bottom, set the table with the good dishes, made a huge southern meal, chicken, greens, mac and cheese, cornbread, banana pudding, all from scratch. I didn't even sit down until everyone else had their plates. After dinner, Greg stood up and tapped his wine glass like he was about to give a toast. Instead, he pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and said, in front of everyone, "Dana, since you don't work, I think it's time you start paying your share of the household expenses." At first I thought it was a joke. He had this little smirk on his face, like he was proud of himself. Then he handed me the paper. It was an itemized spreadsheet. Rent, groceries, internet, utilities, streaming services. It even had gas for my car. Total, $2,938 per month. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stared at the paper. Then his mother, who had been quiet the whole time, said, loud and clear, "Women like you need to be kept in line." That was it. Something snapped in me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the room. I didn't say a single word. I got in my car, drove to a cheap motel across town, and sat on the bed in silence for an hour. Then I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because I realized how stupid I'd been. 12 years, and this is how he saw me. Not as a partner. Not as a wife. As a burden. An expense. Fine. He wanted to turn this into a business arrangement? Then I was going to treat it like one. Here's what Greg forgot. I didn't have a paycheck, but I ran our whole life. I paid all the bills online. I knew his income, his bank accounts, his brokerage login. I was the one who dealt with mortgage companies, refinances, escrow. He liked to act like he was in charge, but it was always me who made sure things didn't fall apart. He just signed the checks. I still had access to everything. I still had his passwords. He never changed them. Why would he? In his mind I was just the wife. So I used that. I pulled up the mortgage. The house was in both our names, but it was my idea to buy it 10 years ago. We paid $280,000. The market had shot up. Our neighborhood was hot now. We owed about $140,000 on it. I listed it privately through a friend of mine who's a real estate agent. I told her everything. She was furious on my behalf and helped me get a buyer, cash, fast, off market. We closed in 2 days. Greg didn't even know until the money hit the escrow account, and I signed my half over. He got a letter from the title company and freaked out. That's when the family group chat started blowing up. His brother. Is this real? Did Dana sell the house? His mom. She's ungrateful. I always knew it. His dad. Greg, what the hell did you do? Greg tried calling me. Over and over. Left 27 voicemails in one day. The first ones were angry. What did you do, Dana? You just sold our house? You're insane. Then the pleading started. Please, we can fix this. Just come home. Let's talk. I didn't answer. I was already in Savannah, in a furnished apartment I paid for with my half of the sale, about $220,000 after fees. I changed my number. Cut off all contact. I took my name off every shared account. He tried to play the victim. Told his whole family I stole from him. Said I was mentally unstable. Said I'd snapped. So I sent the receipts. Literally. I put together a packet. Sent it to every family member. Copies of tax returns. Screenshots of utility bills in my name. Grocery receipts. Calendar notes showing every time I took his mom to the doctor. Pictures of the meal plan notebooks I kept for 12 years. A log of my daily unpaid labor. And one final page. A breakdown of how much a housekeeper, cook, personal assistant, driver, event planner, and nurse would have cost over the years. It came out to more than Greg ever made. That shut them up fast. Greg filed for divorce. I didn't fight it. I didn't ask for alimony. I didn't touch his retirement. I just wanted one thing. I wanted him to apologize. Publicly. To his mother. In front of the family. At his niece's birthday party. I wanted him to feel the same sting I did. He thought I was bluffing. So I filed to make the spreadsheet public record. I sent it to a local blog covering financial abuse. The story got picked up. His job saw it. HR called him in. He called me the next day and said, "What do you want?" I told him again. Apologize. Publicly. He did. I wasn't there to see it, but my friend recorded it. Greg standing in front of his family saying, "I treated Dana like an employee. I was wrong. She didn't owe me anything. I ruined the best thing I had." His mother's face? Cold. Stone. No reaction. That part actually made me feel better than the apology. I'm not done telling this story yet. There's more that happened after. More fallout. More drama. And things got worse before they got better. But I'll keep going if you want to hear it. After the apology, things went quiet for a while. No more calls. No more messages. The group chat went silent. Greg must have realized he lost the fight. I thought I was finally done. But then, out of nowhere, I got served. He was suing me. Apparently, he decided that selling the house, without proper marital consent, was illegal. He claimed I'd committed fraud, that I manipulated him, and that I owed him damages. I sat there with the legal documents in my lap, shaking. It had been almost 5 months since I left. I thought the divorce was going through. But this was a whole new game. I called my lawyer right away. He looked it over and said, "He's trying to punish you. This won't hold up, but it's meant to drain you." And that's exactly what Greg was doing. Dragging me back into court wasn't about money. It was about control. He wanted to keep me stressed, to keep me spending money on lawyers, to wear me down. So I hit back. I filed for discovery on all his financial records. Not just his income, his accounts, his assets, his stock options. I wanted it all opened up in court. I had a right to it anyway since we were still legally married during the house sale. That's when I learned something Greg never wanted me to know. He was in debt. Serious debt. Private loans. Margin calls. He had drained our joint savings before I ever left. Most of what I thought was our money was already gone. He had been making risky trades behind my back for almost 3 years, trying to double his portfolio. At some point, he started losing. And instead of telling me, he kept covering it up. That's when it hit me, this whole stunt with the bill, at dinner? It wasn't just about disrespect. He needed my money. He figured if he could guilt me into paying monthly expenses, He could pocket my half and keep pretending he had things under control. That's why his mom was in on it. That's why it was so public. It was a setup. That realization made me sick. I brought the debt into court. My lawyer presented the full financial audit, and Greg's face turned pale. His attorney actually asked for a recess. I'll never forget that. In the end, the judge didn't just dismiss Greg's claim, he reprimanded him. You can't use the court to harass your ex-wife because she was smarter than you, the judge said. She did everything by the book. You just didn't expect her to walk away. That was one of the best days of my life. But it wasn't over yet. Because someone else came forward. Greg's ex-girlfriend. Not an ex from before me. A woman he'd been seeing during our marriage. Apparently, she didn't know he was still married until she saw the blog post with my name. She reached out to me on Instagram, said, I think we have something in common. At first, I ignored her. I didn't want more drama. But she sent me screenshots. Messages. Pictures. Videos. Greg had been seeing her for almost 2 years. Took her on trips. Bought her gifts, using my credit card one time. She even said he talked about divorcing his lazy wife. But had to get things lined up first. The dates matched the time he gave me the bill. He was never planning to stay with me. He just didn't want to leave empty-handed. When I got off that call with her, I felt something inside me change. The divorce wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to destroy his mask. His image. The golden boy act he kept up in public while hiding all this filth underneath. I didn't want just an ending. I wanted exposure. Real exposure. And I had just the plan to do it. The woman Greg had been cheating with. Her name was Ava, turned out to be a goldmine of information. Once we started talking, it all came pouring out. She didn't even seem angry at him at first. More embarrassed. He told me you were lazy. Said you just sat around all day watching TV and spending his money. That hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because I believed it, but because it made me realize how far he'd gone to rewrite our story. He was creating a whole different version of me to justify the lies he told other people. Ava said she broke it off with him the second she found out he was still married during their relationship. She even showed me the text she sent. You're a liar, and I hope your wife takes you for everything. That gave me an idea. Greg built his whole identity around being the guy who has it all. A good job, a smart wife, a solid family. He networked like crazy. He was on local panels, did talks for financial literacy at the community college, even had a podcast called Money-Minded Men. It made me sick to listen to it. I went through a few episodes just to hear how fake he sounded. Giving advice while secretly drowning in debt. Talking about financial trust in marriage, while cheating on his wife and forging her name on credit card applications. So I made a plan. I reached out to a local journalist I'd worked with before during my event planning days. I gave her everything, the receipts, the court documents, Ava's messages, with permission, the debt records, and the podcast clips where Greg straight up lied. I didn't ask her to write a hit piece. I just gave her the truth. She took it from there. The article hit 2 weeks later. Headline: Financial Experts Divorce Reveals Hidden Debts, Infidelity, and Years of Financial Manipulation. It went viral in Asheville. Even some local finance blogs picked it up. His name started disappearing from speaking engagements. His LinkedIn profile went dark. His firm put out a statement saying, "We take ethics seriously and have launched an internal review." He was toast. But what I didn't expect was his mom. She showed up at my apartment. I was sitting at my kitchen table when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there she was, and, standing there in one of those tight blazers she always wore, lips thin, eyes cold. I didn't say anything. I just raised my eyebrows. She said, "You made a mistake." That was it. No apology. No emotion. I asked, "You mean staying married to your son?" "Yeah, I agree." She shook her head. "Dragging your private life into the public like this. It's classless. You should be ashamed." That was it. I snapped. I said, "You sat at my dinner table, ate my food, and let your son hand me a bill like I was a damn tenant. You called me useless. You said I needed to be kept in line. I cleaned your toilets when you were sick. I drove you to chemo. And now I'm the one who should be ashamed?" She just stood there. Didn't flinch. So I stepped forward and said, real quiet, "You raised him. That's what you should be ashamed of." Then I shut the door in her face. A few days later, Greg sent me one last email. Subject line: "Hope you're happy." Inside it said, "You got what you wanted. I lost everything. You embarrassed my whole family. I can't even walk into a grocery store without someone recognizing me. I hope it was worth it. I didn't reply. He still didn't get it. It wasn't about embarrassment. It was about truth. He humiliated me in front of my family, his family, and strangers I fed at my table. He tried to trap me in a life where I had no voice, no money, and no way out. So I made away. And I wasn't done yet. Because I had one more card to play. He didn't know it yet, but I still had access to a shared storage unit we used to keep across town. Greg forgot all about it. I hadn't. I was about to pay it a visit. That storage unit was in Greg's name, but I was the one who opened it. Back then, we used it to hold seasonal decorations, old furniture, his college stuff, and tons of paperwork. He stopped going years ago. I knew he wouldn't remember half of what was in there. But I did. And I had the keys. I waited until the middle of the week, when I knew Greg would be at work or hiding from the fallout of the article. I pulled into the storage lot, punched in the code, and parked outside Unit 115B. The door creaked up slowly, and that stale, dusty air hit me in the face. But as soon as I stepped in, I saw them, boxes labeled taxes, and personal, do not open. Greg always kept physical copies of everything, like some paranoid accountant. I started digging. What I found made my blood run cold. Inside one of the folders was a stack of bank statements from an account I didn't know existed. It was in his name only. There were large transfers coming in, $2, $500 here, $3,200 there, over a period of 6 months. All labeled as consulting income. I thought, okay, maybe this was just a side gig. But then I saw where the transfers were coming from. My name. My social security number. My old email. Greg had created a fake business account under my name. He used it to apply for a line of credit. He was getting cash advances from this account and moving the money to himself. He stole my identity. I stood there shaking, holding the evidence in my hands, heart pounding in my ears. This man had gone from manipulative to criminal. That's when I decided, I'm going to the police. I packed everything into my trunk, statements, envelopes, copies, even the laptop I found with spreadsheets named alternate accounts. I filed the report the next morning. Fraud, identity theft, wire transfer abuse. I gave it all to the detective assigned to my case. It didn't take long. Less than a month later, Greg was arrested. It wasn't dramatic. No handcuffs at his job or anything. They called him in, and he turned himself over quietly. But it hit the news. Front page of the local paper. Financial advisor charged with identity theft and fraud. Victim is his ex-wife. His podcast was gone. His job fired him. His license was suspended. His accounts frozen. He called me from jail. He actually had the nerve to say, "You did this." And I said, "No, Greg. You did." Then I hung up. The fallout kept coming. His mom's house went up for sale 3 months later. She claimed it was to downsize, but everyone in town knew it was because she had co-signed on one of Greg's private loans. They came for her assets too. She sent me a letter. A real paper letter. No apology. Just 5 words. "You ruined this family, Dana." I burned it. 6 months later, I stood in a small courtroom while Greg was sentenced. 2 years probation, community service, restitution payments. He didn't go to prison, but he had to pay back every dollar, and his record was no longer clean. After it was over, I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just walked out into the sunshine and breathed. I thought that would be the end of it. But karma wasn't done. Ava, his ex-mistress, ended up writing a blog post of her own. It went viral. Then she got invited on a podcast to talk about narcissistic relationships. She name-dropped Greg without saying his last name, but people knew. She got a book deal out of it. And Greg? Last I heard, he was living in his cousin's basement outside Winston-Salem, working at a car rental desk, trying to rebuild his credit. As for me? I rebuilt too. Not out of spite. Out of survival. My event planning business in Savannah took off. I found good clients, loyal people, and I stopped looking over my shoulder. I stopped needing to explain myself. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, but I'm different now. I ask harder questions. I speak up quicker. I protect my time, my energy, my money. I tell this story not to brag. Not to make myself look like some kind of hero. I tell it because for 12 years I was invisible. And then one night, in front of a dinner table full of people, my husband tried to put a price tag on my worth. So I answered him. Not with words. With receipts. With action. With truth. And that truth hit harder than anything he ever expected. He thought I was soft. He thought I would stay. He was wrong. And I'll never be that silent woman at the table again.